Can you ever escape? Can the inevitable ever be cheated? Can one ever be scot-free? To escape is to assume imprisonment. To cheat is to assume rule. To be scot-free is to assume penalty. An escape, a cheat, to be scot-free is to manifest a miracle. A miracle is itself an assertion of the inflexibility of our condition, not unlike irony a reversal of the real and the ideal. Thus, miracles carry with them the unease of unmet expectation, constituting a form of betrayal. For better or worse, the world did not conform with what was expected of it. What is it to be scot-free? What is it to be Mr. Miracle? Tom King asks, "Did you escape death, Mr. Miracle?" Mr. Miracle number 1 presents Tom King and Mitch Gerads' vision of a disjointed, suicidal escape artist. Escape artist both by trade and necessity. Scot-free escapes. Scot-free is Mr. Miracle, but Darkside simply is. King and Gerads perform two powerful miracles of their own in this issue. They provide us with the effective thesis of these 12 issues and craft a complex psychological profile of trauma. True to form, King manages still to line this new series with its own history. Like Batman and the Vision before it, the story within Mr. Miracle is the story of Mr. Miracle historically. King owes a great deal to Jack Kirby's original brilliance in creating not only Mr. Miracle, but the entire pantheon of new gods. Thus, King's own potential anxiety in attempting to live up to the image of the King of Comics subtly lurks in the background via a poster of the original Mr. Miracle number 1. On a deeper level, this image haunts Scott as he compares himself to who he is. The opening narration is quoted directly from Kirby's first issue, but the question shifts in intensity. While Kirby utilized the more bombastic sensationalism of escape artistry, when King asks, "Is he something more?" we are left wondering what Scott is. Is he simply escape, and thus always dialectically opposed to a trap? Is he ever free? Despite the conversation with Kirby's version of Scott, King's story features a radically different presentation. Kirby's 4 to 6 panel grid is replaced by a more traditional 9 panel grid. Kirby understood on the most crucial level how sequential art must create movement. The eye line from panel to panel must be precise because pace is much harder to dictate in comics. Thus, the limited paneling aided the tone of his stories, mitigating the sometimes excessive walls of text. King, however, is a master of the 9-panel grid's ability to create nuance. The Omega Man is a testament to how powerful and diverse this traditional layout can be for its rather simple ability to establish a setup, a beat, and a payoff. Take, for example, page 5. We have first the image of Scott after he slashes his wrists. Next, the boastful claim of his escape mastery. We have both established where Scott is, suicidally depressed, and his beat in his ability to escape. Yet, the third panel is him still there. Not only did he not escape, he has stayed here for several days. Scott has not progressed in any sense of the word. King's grid style is sometimes broken with splash pages, which either have to accomplish an entire setup beat payoff in one image, or elongate the impact of any one of these steps. The first 2 images of the series, encompassing the first 3 pages, demonstrate one way of doing this. The first image is Scott facing the reader. No costume, no smile, no filters. Our setup is Scott in a raw, direct way. Here, our beat is the narration, borrowed from Kirby, asking, is he a master of spectacular trickery, or is he something more? Is this image's gravitas a trick, or is something deeper, darker, lurking? The 2-page spread that follows is, in the most raw fashion, our payoff. There was no trick or escape. Scott is suicidal. He attempts to escape life. Our only other spread, depending on how you define page 4, is the haunting statement, Darkside is, which works in conjunction with the pacing and payoff style of this grid. For a moment, consider comics as a form. Nothing forces a reader to linger on any page for any moment of time. Thus, the use of a spread is dangerous as it creates a profound dissonance, a page that reads quickly but requires a massive shock to justify its use. King, understanding this, often pays close attention to how the physical text over the image can control the reader. Batman and Catwoman and Rooftops have very short, pointed dialogue, yet its placement and lyrical style, literally stacking on top of each other, allows for a form of control. The idea of their dancing around each other is physically present even if the page is read quickly. Similarly, Omega Men number 9 subtracts one of 9 panels until the halfway point of the story. However, it systematically adds denser text, keeping the pace per page relatively equal. In the second half, it does the opposite. If King wanted to direct more and more action without losing the subtlety of each panel, he is fully capable and has done so in the past. Yet, he chooses not to in all 3 spreads showcased here. The goal is to use comics, a media ripe with a control of time and space, to discuss trauma. Kirby and King's style, like all good comic paneling, wants to constantly move forward through the distribution of space and its association with time. We can refer to this as chronotope, from Russian literary theorist Mikhail Batkin. We will give the name chronotope, literally time-space, to the intrinsic connectedness of temporal and spatial relationships that are artistically expressed in literature. The comic format forces the reader to engage in constant awareness of space and time, or else the text is incomprehensible. Each left-to-right movement allows one to control their experience of time as well as understanding of space within the text. Comics then operate as chronotopic by virtue of their form, which is argued in length by Harriet Earl. In her essay Comics and the Chronotope, Time-Space Relationships in Traumatic Sequential Art, Earl describes the function of chronotope in comics as demonstrating the experience of time perception during trauma. Trauma is to become unstuck in time. Thus, a comic's ability to assume a linear flow of time can be broken to demonstrate psychological trauma. The pace of Mr. Miracle is thus deliberate in how long each scene lasts. Nothing forces the first 3 pages to be any more than a snapshot of events. However, even when scenes are slowed by text, like Mr. Miracle's interview, the presentation is blurred and disjointed. Scott's recollection of the events often lasts longer or shorter than narratively required. Scott does not move forward. We simply see moments harshly snapped next to each other on an inconsistent timescale. The most profound use of these narrative breaks is King's repeated panel of Darkseid is. Scott's thoughts are broken up by the declaration in 2 ways. Firstly, Darkseid is appears in a sequence of 9 panels where the connective between each panel is erased. Once again, in page 5, it appears as each panel moves further and further along Scott's time at the hospital with no transitions. Secondly, page 7 and 8 have the panel interrupt the scene. As Orion beats Scott, the panel keeps appearing, constantly removing us from the linear experience of time. As Scott's trauma gets worse, such as his realization that Oberon and his father are dead, Darkseid is outnumbers Scott's panels on the page. Scott's ability to experience even singular moments is broken until Darkseid is takes up the entire page and, by extension, Scott's mind. Barda pushes Scott to join the battle against Darkseid, but Scott simply goes along with what happens around him rather than assert himself in any moment. Scott cannot escape life, nor can he live it. As a first issue, Mr. Miracle establishes the core question of this series. If Darkseid is, what is scot-free? Juxtaposed are Scott without his mask and scenes of Mr. Miracle as a showman. His interview, his declaration of escape on page 5, the recurring poster, as well as his mask thrown on page 3, all demonstrate the space between Scott and Miracle. Scott's need to escape literally has its own persona, and who scot-free is remains the lingering question. Darkseid is. He is a god. He is a trauma. He is evil. Scott defined himself by his ability to escape Darkseid, but the anxiety of the constant traps around him are never resolved. Again, King inherits Kirby's discussions of escape. The original run of Mr. Miracle's series featured stories like the Paranoid Pill, as well as the constant declaration that deserters of Apocalypse are never safe. Thus, is the ultimate escape from Darkseid simply an escape from life? Or is that assertion of anti-life still a trap? Death. He will always be seconds away. Swift, relentless, final. Follow Mr. Miracle. Enter the next trap. Hey everybody, thanks for watching the Mr. Miracle video. That was interesting. I'm going to go ahead and say that Mr. Miracle number 1 by Tom King, Mr. Art, is one of the greatest comics to come out this decade, and this run will more likely than not become one of the greatest things to come out of this century of comics. It's so good. It's one of the best things I've ever read. I actually had a moment where, when it came out, the moment I read it online, I had to stop and I had to text my best friend and told him while he was on vacation in DC, I'm like, no, stop what you're doing. I need you to read this. I got so into it that the next day after I came home from work, I started typing out this entire video, and I needed like a physical copy of the book because it just makes it easier if you're talking about paneling and stuff. So I went down to the office and I printed literally the whole comic and like stapled it like it was an actual book. I had to do it some way, and that was the only way I had at the time. Then yesterday, my friend and I went, he just got back from DC, and he and I were hanging out at a coffee shop, and I called one of my local comic book stores in Charlotte. Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, and I bought the actual physical issue, which is the first single issue I've bought in a really long time. But I didn't buy it for like $3.99 because the book was selling so fast. I bought the thing for $20. And $20 is a lot of money for someone that barely has any. So to spend $20 on this after you've already printed it, but to be motivated by this book to spend $20 and to come home from work and type out and edit this entire video in a span of just a couple days, it really, really hit me. This is just one of the best things ever. I'm determined to get every issue of this as it comes out now, and then buy the trade so I can use the trade to read, but then just take each of these issues and buy like a little comic frame and just hang it, because I think that would look fantastic. And I had to get the variant just because interior artists doing the covers is one of my favorite things, particularly if it's a comic I love, so I will get it this way. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching the video. Thank you, Tom King, thank you, Mitch, for writing one of my favorite things of all time. You probably hear a beeping in the background. There's like a low battery on a smoke detector, so sorry if that keeps happening. Whatever, we'll just have to ignore it. But thank you. Thank you so much for watching this, and thank you for this comic. It is one of the greatest things ever. It got me in a really, really emotional way. Because I opened this first page. It has nothing to do with Rick over here. It has more to do with Mr. Miracle over here. But I saw this first page, and there was something like really raw and emotional about it, where like I just sort of like, he saw him staring at me and started thinking about him as me. And then when you flip the page, trigger warning still applies here, and you get the whole cutting himself thing, it really hit me as a guy that like literally has scars from cutting himself and stuff. It really, really hit me. And I think it's a fantastically powerful book. It's really raw, it's really emotional, it's really creative. So thank you for letting this be published. Thank you for this amazing thing. And thank you for watching the video. If you like what I do, check out the links in the description for my Twitter account, my Facebook, as well as my Patreon, because I could always use money. If I'm going to be buying this book, I kind of want to keep talking about it in the same sort of format. So Patreon would kind of help with that. It also helps to like go out and buy groceries, because that's what I got to go do now. And I don't know if I have enough money for everything I need to eat. So if you feel sorry for me, please go ahead and add money to my Patreon account, because I could really use it. Thanks everybody for watching towards the end. Click on any of the following links in the description or on the video if you want to keep following me. I don't know exactly what the next video essay is going to be. The fact that this came out a week after Logan was not some grand design by me. It just happened to work out that way. I kind of want to talk about an album, but that would be more of like an off-the-cuff thing. I have a side project I'm co-writing at the moment. I have that Iron Man 3 thing. I have a Superman paper. There's stuff in the air. What it's going to be and when it's coming out, I don't entirely know yet. If you have any suggestions for what you want me to talk about, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.